Welcome to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I'm your host, Arwynne O'Neill, and I'm here again with my friend Katia. And today we are going to be talking about the Mars-Uranus opposition, which is coming up on November 11th.
That's coming up. Thanks so much for having me, Arwynne.
Thanks again for joining me. It's great to have you. So last time we talked about the Mars-Pluto square, and that was exact on the 8th of October. Mm-hmm. And as we know, that was within 24 hours of the Hamas attack, which precipitated these awful events that have been happening in Israel and Gaza ever since. And, you know, as we discussed, there was a potential for violence and destruction with Mars-Pluto aspects. And that is often the easiest and most obvious interpretation of one of those aspects. But with human nature, you can never really go wrong predicting that people will act out in volatile and aggressive ways. And this is, of course, one of the most historically troubled regions in the world. Decades of tension have erupted into horrific violence time after time, followed by retaliation, escalation, other countries ramping up financial support, and the rhetoric and the divisiveness and polarization that always happens. On this podcast, we do try to focus on the positives. So even though these things are happening, and I think I even said at that time when we were talking about Mars square Pluto, like watch the news, watch for these types of events, and bang, like within 24 hours, sure enough, there was the potential for violence and aggression and transformative destruction. But at the same time, there is the potential for transformation through action, which was the positive meaning that we focused on when those two planets come together. We are now going to be talking about Mars and Uranus, which is another volatile planetary combination. I'm going to shout out a couple of astrologers who really focus on political events and historical cycles, which I personally find fascinating. On this podcast, we do tend to focus more on personal astrology, which is like, what can you do with these energies and how can you use them to benefit your life and kind of take advantage of these different planetary combinations and use them for good. But if you are interested in going down the rabbit hole, I'm going to recommend a couple of astrologers who are talking about the politics, and they really have great opinions. They're very erudite, very intelligent, and very eloquent in their work. So Jessica Murray, she's based out of San Francisco, and Eric Francis, who is based out of New York State. They both are just fascinating political minds. They focus a lot on transpersonal astrology, on politics, and on historical cycles. And also Rob Bresney of Free Will Astrology. He has talked a lot about really beautiful ways that we can go about healing historical wounds and how we can talk to each other without falling into the traps of tribalism and polarization, which is increasingly difficult these days. Mm-hmm. So with all that said, let's go on to talk about Mars and Uranus, which is, as I said, another volatile planetary combination, with perhaps even worse of a reputation for sudden events that mix the martial qualities of Mars and the unexpected lightning strike quality of Uranus. Pluto is known for creative destruction and transformation, but Uranus is also, it's got a positive side, which is that it's known for, it's actually the planet that sort of rules astrology, and it's known for being the planet of innovation and science. And it was actually the first planet historically that was discovered with a telescope, which is interesting, in 1781. Mm-hmm. That's Uranus, and it's in Taurus. It's going to be at 21 degrees Taurus, and it's going to be opposite Mars and Scorpio at 21 degrees. So that's going to be exact on November 11th. And I think this podcast will be going out a few days ahead of that. Mars opposite Uranus is an aspect that's characterized by volatile excitement, tension, and the urge for freedom, and a feeling of enormous energy being focused through aggressive action. So with Mars and Scorpio, this action can be extraordinarily vicious and calculating, unfortunately. But yeah, we are, as I said, going to try to talk about the positive.
Yeah.
So
I'd really like that. And I think a lot of other people would like that too.
Right, exactly. Mars rules both Aries and Scorpio. And in Aries, it tends to be more of the firefighter, the warrior, the boxer, whereas in Scorpio, it can take kind of a more dark sort of form. Scorpio is also very inquisitive, very probing, it's the sign of like the detective, of the private investigator or the investigative journalist. So these are times when you can use your curiosity and your intellect and your calculating, probing sort of qualities to get things done and to harness the power of Uranus, which is more of a sort of a lightning striking sort of planet that sort of rules genius.
I like it. So yeah, I like how you spin that. So that's really nice. And how often does this happen?
Oh, yeah. It's similar to the previous ones we've talked about because Mars moves fairly quickly. So this actually happens about every 2 years, pretty regularly.
Okay. I gotta look back at my calendar to see what happened 2 years ago and
Right.
try to compare it to this year.
Right, exactly.
So what are some of the positive aspects of Uranus in opposition to Mars?
This can be a release of pressure. The excitement for fast-paced progress sometimes can harness things that have been 2 years in the making. So if you think about things that have been happening and building up in your life for the last 2 years, or, in world events, we've gone through a lot of tension over the last couple of years with COVID. Things are kind of coming to a head in a lot of ways politically, but there are also things in your personal life that may have been harnessed and sort of trapped for the last 2 years, which now may be a time to sort of break out. And there's a potential for change with purpose. And you might want to think about where you were 2 years ago and what's changed since then, and to try to think of ways that you can use Mars energy to bring about something new, or to bring about something authentic, or just push for a deeper understanding, or to use something scientific or technological to create a breakthrough in your life.
How can someone effectively stand up for their beliefs with the influence of Uranus in opposition to Mars?
Well, let's first think about the need for freedom and the need for authenticity. These are really good buzzwords for Uranus in a positive way. And daring to sort of trust your instincts and to trust your drive and your initiative, using those things to maybe stimulate some sort of change that has been on the horizon but has been trapped. If you've outgrown a situation or learned everything you can from a situation, now might be the time to make a move and to try something new and to go out on a limb and do something bold and different.
So good time for initiative.
Initiative, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And it's normal to feel restless and kind of bored and on edge when these planets are coming up to a head because they are in opposition. So that's creating a tension. And so you might be compelled to suddenly just cut ties, cut obligations, run away from duties or responsibilities, that's possible. Starting fights and getting into conflicts that have been coming to a head for a long time. Like this is another thing that could be seen in the world and also in our personal lives. So those are good and bad things that could happen, but anytime you have like two tense planets that are sort of coming at each other in opposition, you're going to have the opportunity to do something good or bad. And it's just this tension has to be released somehow.
So change is inevitable, but it's how you choose to go through it. That requires a lot of courage, I imagine.
Exactly. And you want to actually make sure that you're doing it in a way that's actually going to benefit you and not just kind of burning bridges. You want to make sure that there's a balance. That's another thing with oppositions is that you can have an imbalance and all of a sudden you feel this need for freedom or change or disruption and you can just snap. And you want to make sure that you're doing that in a constructive way because it's not always a bad thing to cut ties or to, just suddenly snap. I mean, I know I've had all this stuff in storage for the last 2 years. And there's an example that's something out of our personal lives. I've had literally for 2 years, basically a room in our apartment piled with boxes of stuff that's not even ours. And we inherited it and we didn't even know what was in there. We've just kind of ignored it. And now it's just, no, this needs to go. This needs to. And so I've been selling a bunch of stuff on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and also just ripping through boxes and just, throwing things away, like actually just tossing things and sifting through things and finding out what's of value and what's just emotional baggage is another way that this could be useful.
Yeah, we all have that either from just emotional baggage, something you can't actually see, or that chair in the corner where we constantly put stuff on it.
Right. The chair no one sits on that you just pile coats on or.
And yours grew into a whole room, which is wild.
I mean, in Vancouver, we don't have a lot of space, Exactly. Most apartments are pretty small.
So it's taken over.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just...
Isn't there a show about that?
Time. Yeah, there's a hoarding thing for sure. But yeah, I think we all have things that we hoard, whether it's emotional baggage or, just not standing up for yourself and letting it kind of pile up and pile up and pile up, and then it's going to explode.
And what sparked that change for you in particular? Like, what was that last straw that...
I think I've made no secret of the fact that I've been looking for work. I've been between contracts for a couple of months now, and I did just land a contract, which starts...
Congrats.
Thank you. Which starts tomorrow, in fact. I think that was actually the catalyst, was just like okay, there's a new beginning on the horizon, and it's not like there's any, my home office is completely usable, but it was just the thought of now I'm going to have less free time, and just using this last week or so that I've had my days free to just go through all of this stuff.
Yeah. But that's also something that we do with the change of the seasons. Like we do spring cleaning. There's a baby on the way. We suddenly do a deep clean. It sounds like it is an inspiration to make space for something new.
Absolutely.
Coming up that you're expecting.
Absolutely. And that's a great way of spinning the positive to it, is that cutting through things and being just ruthless in terms of throwing things away that you no longer need, or cutting ties that you no longer need, that no longer serve you, or even getting rid of a job that you have hated for a while, where you've had just tension and conflicts and it's hurting your health, anything like that, where it's been approximately 2 years in this case, where we're going to try to harness this exact transit. Yeah. And then on November 11th, when it comes exact, watch out for bad news and all that, but at the same time, try to think of ways that you can harness that in your own life for positive sparks and evolution.
Yeah, that was so well put, and something that we all experience for sure. The other thing that came up recently with someone I knew, that they got a strange diagnosis and they were questioning it quite a bit. It didn't feel right for them to accept that, and they were just thinking that it doesn't feel like it's me, or that's not how I want to live, or like I don't want to accept that. And so they were actually questioning this, a professional physician who gave a certain diagnosis that just didn't seem right. And I was encouraging them to seek a second opinion. And they felt like it was not the right thing to do, in terms of like, well, I shouldn't be questioning. Like, this is a person that knows more about this than I do. And I was like, well, when you have that gut feeling that something is just not right, no matter who you're talking to, like it's, there's no harm in just asking for a second opinion, or just saying like, are you sure? Or like, is this right? Or like, can we just check one more time? Or something. Because, we're human.
Everyone's fallible. Exactly. Doctors, scientists, everybody.
And it's it might be a good opportunity, like right now, that if you're feeling that way, that this is a time to act, or to question, or just to see where things could go, because who knows, like it could be incorrect.
Absolutely.
That's why we have so much malpractice.
Yes.
And whatnot,
Absolutely. That is a great example of the positive side of Scorpio, being this inquisitive, probing, concerned with life and death issues. I mean, this is why it's so interesting that this is Scorpio time is also the time around Halloween, the Day of the Dead, Samhain in the Celtic calendar. It's a time of just getting to the end of the harvest, and in the northern hemisphere, and going into winter. It brings up all these thoughts of like life and death, and Scorpio is all about the important life or death matters. And that is absolutely something that you could do when Mars is in Scorpio and Mars coming opposite Uranus in Taurus. That polarity really does have a lot to do with health and the physical body, and these systems that can break down and that we rely on for our health and our vitality. So if you do have a health issue, if you have something where you think that you've belittled by a medical professional in some way, I actually have someone in my life who had exactly that same experience, and they did go to a different doctor and had an amazing experience. They had a wonderfully transformational conversation with this person who absolutely heard them, felt strongly that they are fixable, and there's a new treatment plan now, and this person is feeling so much better, both emotionally and physically, now that they're actually being acknowledged and validated and told, like, no, it's not just because the body breaks down at a certain age. Who wants to hear that? Obviously, yes, it does, but it doesn't have to be this age, right?
Yeah.
So that's really great advice. And I love the interpretation that you've had there.
And what are some potential challenges that may come up from this tension between Uranus and Mars in opposition?
So we were just talking about the need to sort of question authority and things like that, to not always just take it as this person knows more than me. They have a degree or whatever. At the same time, of course, there's going to be a flip side. But Mars-Uranus oppositions, especially the opposition, tend to have a very anti-authoritarian, very rebellious sort of nature. And that can be just a knee-jerk reaction. You can actually kind of have this cynicism where everything, the fake news, you can just you can just assume that everybody is lying, and that can be ramped up during these oppositions. And unfortunately, that's not a healthy approach either. Like, it's all about balance, right?
Yeah.
to question authority and to question truths that kind of come down to you over generations. The need to have certain enemies, for example, the need to always retaliate, to always escalate. That is a learned behavior that we can try to break those cycles. Maybe not as individuals, but the goal, right?
So it's not about rebellion for rebellion's sake.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that might be really difficult at this time, because you might just feel like, I need to break my chains, and everyone's lying, everyone's against me, the establishment, break the patriarchy. But nobody wins when the patriarchy is broken. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Nothing comes out of systems breaking down that's really going to be positive, generally speaking. We can learn to question and to assert ourselves and to fight for what's important. Canceling or breaking the system or defunding the police or any of these buzzwords, like, those things are overreactions that are generally not going to make anyone's lives better. Not to bring it back to these wars that are happening, but who benefits from these wars? Well, it's obviously arms manufacturers and certain politicians, and they get to say the thing and back the right team, and they look virtuous. But who loses is every citizen who lives in those regions. It's innocent people who are always going to suffer the most.
Absolutely. The innocent parties are definitely going to pay the highest price.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just collateral damage. It's such an ugly phrase, but that's exactly what that is. And now, after 1,400 people were killed in the initial attack, I believe the death toll is up to like over 8,000. And it's just, and that's just today. We're recording this on October 31st. By the time it posts, it could be twice that, which is just an awful thing.
So questioning authority is fine, but outright denial of cooperation, compromise can burn bridges and lead to a lot of recklessness. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
exactly. And, freedom is obviously very important to all of us. The breaking your chains and the tendency to be against any kind of authority is not going to do anyone any favors. Generally speaking, it's going to result in a crackdown, usually. Something where you feel like you need to fight the man or whatever. If you have this explosion of temper that's been boiling up under your skin all this time, maybe for 2 years, it's going to suddenly burst out, and you're the one who's probably going to suffer. You're probably not going to inflict a wound on the authoritarian figures that you feel are oppressing you. It's probably going to backlash upon you, unfortunately, and those bridges are going to be burned, and then you're going to be kind of left to rebuild the pieces, and that's an unfortunate.
It sounds like it could be quite isolating as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And luckily in this day and age, we can usually sort of fight the man from like behind our Twitter account, or, most people
Much
aren't
easier.
People. Yeah, exactly. And at least we're speaking from a privileged position here in North America, in Canada, and be fighting any kind of powers. What's probably going to be like, typing out an angry screed, an email or a tweet or, whatever, and feeling self-righteous about that. But even that can have terrible consequences.
Yeah.
A lot of people have
about it. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Just in this particular conflict alone, like, there have been a lot of people who have spoken out of turn, so to speak, and had a backlash where they've lost their jobs. They've been kicked out of whatever club they were in. And I'm not going to say what I think is maybe the right thing to, that everyone has their sides. And my opinion is that it's always the civilians, and it's always unfortunately, the innocent people on all sides who are going to lose. And, whatever your political beliefs are about the historical conflicts that are going on, everyone's afraid to speak, and yet also afraid to just kind of not have their voice heard in some way. And
so take a breath.
Take a breath.
Hasty reactions may replace thoughtful responses, and you really don't want to get to that point.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. This is the biggest takeaway.
Heavy, to say the least. Let's transition from the doom and gloom.
All right.
And
if you insist.
Yeah. And how about we talk about something like celebrities, which is why we're all here.
Yes.
Mostly me.
Absolutely. Well, I did actually look up, I mean, believe it or not, some people who have Mars opposite Uranus in their charts. As I said, this aspect happens every 2 years, but I also made a point of looking at when it was in Mars, when Mars was in Scorpio and Uranus was in Jupiter last time. This was in 1938. So a couple of celebrities we might still know are Jon Voight, the actor, and Frank Zappa, the musician. So that's an interesting way of looking at like harnessing these this sort of volatile, anti-establishment kind of rebellious energy in a good way. Another one from 1606, painter Rembrandt was definitely kind of thought of as an iconoclastic, rebellious kind of figure in his day as a Dutch impressionist. So there's a few examples with this exact pairing in Scorpio and in Jupiter. Sorry, in Taurus. I keep saying Jupiter.
I
Taurus.
Why, actually?
Because Jupiter is also in Taurus right now. But yeah, I don't want to confuse anyone. We're talking about Mars and Uranus, and we're talking about Scorpio and Taurus, because those are opposites. Some people who actually have this aspect, but not in those signs, and these are more modern actors and people. Seth MacFarlane, the creator of The Family Guy, and The Orville, which is a show I quite enjoy, and definitely a rebellious, iconoclastic,
absolutely
kind of
bold.
Yes. Bold, very bold. Yes, some people might consider him, very irreverent, possibly too irreverent, but he's also a very funny guy. Peter Falk, otherwise known as Columbo. Kanye West.
Oh.
Yes.
Outspoken.
To say the least. Not afraid of getting into trouble by his words. And this could also be said of the next few people. Alec Baldwin, Roman Polanski, and Roseanne Barr. Very similarly.
Highly creative,
highly opinionated, definitely anti-authoritarian and not giving a damn who they offend. That could be seen as a good thing, obviously. It's great for comedy. Roseanne Barr is definitely one of the comedic pioneers.
Oh, yeah. Prone to temper.
Oh, absolutely. Well. Temper and conflict and offending people and getting canceled.
Yeah.
and in a lot of trouble for maybe not thinking before speaking.
I assume lots of legal issues as well.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely. So we're seeing some of the pitfalls just in those personalities. Those are obviously the extremes that I've picked out because they are a great example. If you have this in your chart, you're not necessarily at the level of a Kanye West or a Roseanne Barr offending people and getting in trouble. It is a pretty common aspect. As I said, it happens every 2 years. So we just have to be aware of the potential for the positive and the negative.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there are so many positives for sure. Taken to the extreme, they could definitely wreak havoc, alienate potential allies, get you in legal trouble, and obviously get canceled.
Yeah, exactly.
Which none of us really want.
None of us really want that.
I guess when you have nothing to lose.
Yeah, or you have tons of wealth and fame and you just say what you want because you're at a certain level, like maybe you're not worried about being canceled.
Yeah. Is it boredom? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's also something about this aspect where if you have Mars opposite Uranus in your chart, you just can't help yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where we all think, well, why can't they just exercise a bit of self-control? But for them, we have to think it must be harder, you know?
But it is courageous as well. I'm just thinking of this one time I watched a short video clip of a woman taking offense at a comedy show.
Oh, no.
I know. And she couldn't even verbalize what she was offended by, but she was like, no, this is going to be really offensive to someone I know or somebody else. And she just couldn't stop. You know,
my God.
And it was cringy for sure.
Yeah.
Because you're at a comedy show. Like,
you bought the ticket.
Absolutely. But, the fact that she was standing up for someone else, not even herself. Yeah. That was really brave. Just maybe not the right time or the right space or the right context.
Be brave, but think before you jump up and heckle.
Have a plan.
Have a plan. Exactly. Yeah, it's true. And some of the good things about this aspect in people's charts is definitely that they do have the ability to stand up to the man or the woman, whatever that system is, the authority. They're independent and they do what they think is right, no matter what society says. If they are annoying to others, they don't really care. It's like they want to be free. They want to do their own thing. And this is a driving force in their life. If you have this aspect, it's really going to be hard for you to be moderate and temperate and control your impulses. Something about living in a society with other people that we all do have to do that. You know, maybe if you have friends who have this aspect or family members that have this aspect, believe that they do mean well.
Yeah.
Give them the benefit of the doubt and understand that maybe it is harder for them to control their impulses and they keep their opinion to themselves in the heat of the Thanksgiving dinner or whatever the case may be. If you go to a comedy show with them, carry some duct tape and be prepared to
leave them at home.
Or maybe just watch it on TV with them. Yeah, exactly. Honestly, there have been some people in my life who I have actually been afraid to go to certain types of events with because I'm not going to go into any detail, but it was, there were people who I've known in the past. I cringed and I thought, oh God, this is going to be ugly. And I just don't want this. And you end up sort of avoiding, maybe not avoiding being around them, but avoiding taking them certain places.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing when it's like just the two of you or like you're in private.
Right.
And it's a safe space where you can call them out and be like, I don't feel this way. Or interesting idea.
Yeah.
We obviously have different opinions on this, but when it's in a public space, and suddenly just the fact that you both went to that comedy show, suddenly now you're part of
and
that.
You hear something that's like it's going to trigger them and you're just like, oh no. Yeah. Despite that, they do also have the ability to, stand up for what's right when defending others. And that can be a great thing. And conflict isn't to them as much of a fearful thing. It's almost like a stimulating thing. It's almost like something that they lean into the fray where, most people would kind of go, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to argue. I don't want to make an enemy of this person. And they're just like, well, I have to say something.
Yeah, it's an opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like they're just itching for that all the time. They almost love when the opportunity actually comes up to sort of just lean into the fray and let loose on somebody. That could be freeing if
totally
if
they're a bit larger than me and or maybe even quicker, maybe I won't listen to that.
Exactly. Yeah, and they are also prone to taking risks, unfortunately, not just with their words, but these can be like sort of daredevil people who can take risks in life, whether it's they're reckless driver or attracted to sports that are aggressive and violent and potentially dangerous. These are the sort of darker sides of it. They should try to avoid hurting others if possible. Like maybe if you know that you have this tendency, try kickboxing or archery, something where you're not necessarily going to...
A healthy coping.
Not
a healthy release of that pent-up energy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some kind of a solitary sport.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
When no one else is involved.
Right.
And no animal is involved. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Like a pillow.
Yeah, exactly.
And do those people, do they attract the same kinds of people, like in relationships? Or would they attract opposites?
Honestly, I would think they would attract opposites. I mean, I haven't really dug into this too much. The people I've known who I was thinking about when we were talking about the people you want to avoid taking to certain types of places, those people's partners were definitely more the opposite, more the sort of stable, quieting, comforting, placating.
Not necessarily like trying to.
No, but enabling might be another word that we would use.
Condoning?
Condoning is definitely true. Yeah, their partners probably really love that excitement about them because otherwise they would not stay around. They probably love something about that volatility and the fact that they're acting out something that the partner actually feels but would never do themselves because they don't have that aspect that's crackling away under the surface and causing them to want to act out. But maybe they sort of secretly thrill that someone is doing it.
Yeah. Well, vicariously living through somebody else doing something really different from you is super exciting. And you're living vicariously, but not taking any of the risk.
Yeah.
Which is...
Unless you both get kicked out of the comedy club or, if it's a
then maybe it would be a quiet ride home.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah. Or you get in the car and you're, that was a terrible situation. That was so unjust. We shouldn't have gotten kicked out, blah, blah, blah. And then they agree, and then it's them against the world.
Yeah.
And that can also be a very, very comforting sort of insulating little bubble to have in a relationship when you feel like, everyone else is wrong.
But I wonder if these are the same people that would write a strongly worded email to the comedy manager and say like they had a terrible experience. And these are the people that might even get, free tickets the next time, as opposed to like you're banned for life, because it wasn't really that big of a deal. They just stood up, they got kicked out, whatever. Yeah. But if they said that we weren't happy, we want a refund, they might get that refund, or they might get the free tickets. And it's that courage that some of us don't have, because it's so, it can range everywhere from cringy to far too brave to act out on that.
Totally.
But these are the people that will actually get what they want.
Yeah.
Because they keep asking for it.
And I mean, that might be a better way to channel it, really. Like, instead of standing up and heckling the comedian and getting embarrassed and getting posted on YouTube or Twitter or TikTok or whatever and becoming the meme of the day where, look at this, Karen or whatever you want to call it, right? Like, look at this. No, we love Karens. We do. But like that typical sort of person who gets slapped down for being obnoxious in a public place where their opinion is not invited. Yeah. Maybe the better way to channel that energy would be to go home and stewing and mad and, type out that furious email and get the free tickets. That's probably a better way to do it. And obviously that's probably the way that a lot more people do it. I mean, how often does someone stand up in the middle of a comedy show and heckle? Like, not as often as probably they go home and write that angry email. Yeah. So, is that the moral of our? I hate to end on that note. Gosh.
I have an email to write now. I don't.
I mean, it's funny. Before the days of Yelp and Twitter and all this stuff, I remember someone saying like, they used to get like samples, like free samples all the time, because like every time something was wrong with a product it brought home, or if they had an allergic reaction, they wouldn't just take it back to the store to get a refund. They would write to the company and say like, your product caused me to have an allergic breakout, whatever. And they would get all sorts of free stuff, which is, I don't know if that happens as much these days, but I mean, these days you instantly, if you don't like something or you have a bad reaction to it, like, the first thing you do is you go and you write a terrible Yelp review, or you slam the company on Twitter and get them to respond in some way. I don't know if it's it's probably more effective in terms of the company actually doing something.
That's a good point, because if you're telling the company directly, it's not public,
right?
It's not.
You might get free stuff, but it's not going to help the world. It's not going to help.
Exactly.
Right.
But the company might improve their product, or they might, be turned on to an issue that they didn't even know existed. Yeah. And so now everyone's happy in that this Karen, no, it's not Karen, but this person who wasn't satisfied with the product, gets a free product. She's happy. They are happy. The company improves something, and now everyone else has improved, and
absolutely
we can still channel all of that. I must question authority, or I must act out on my beliefs, and but it's being channeled respectfully. And it's being productively, that's it. And it could be helpful to so many other people.
Definitely.
But I guess maybe it's the intention, is it that you want to be loud and proud, but not in a good way?
And it's not just about just getting, a bunch of free stuff from the company. It's about like, this product is harming me and potentially other people, and that's important to bring to light, because otherwise companies will just get away with it. They have for hundreds of years.
They could,
Yeah. I mean, I think we've actually mined this aspect for quite a bit of really good information, positive and negative potentials, what it looks like in your chart, some great celebrity examples.
Yeah, maybe this opposition is working well for me too.
Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope. No more awful world events. Let's all use this to to speak to the man. Do it from the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, it was a nice calming cup of chamomile tea.
Yes, exactly. Well, this has been awesome.
Arwynne, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me. And thanks everyone for listening, and join us next time.
Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology, or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.